Good morning. It's January 31st, and it's time for another edition of Coffee with Fred. Of course, I'm your host, Fred. That whole intro is completely ridiculous. So I had put in the title about, have you ever had a tire explode going 70 miles an hour on the freeway? I have. So this will be some more midline stories. In 2001, into 2001, going into 2002-ish, we ended up getting a record deal with this label called Gotham Records. And they had distribution with Warner Brothers and so on and so forth. And we were also had a Jägermeister sponsorship. So Jägermeister would pay to have our posters made and swag to give away and things like that. And sometimes they would help pay for radio ads wherever we were playing and so on. So we were doing a lot of touring, and we wanted to save money by not having to stay in hotels all the time, because for struggling rock bands traveling, money is tight. So we had ended up buying a motorhome. It was close to 50 feet long, and then with our trailer. So from tip to tail, we were about 70 feet long. And our very first road trip, we went to Twin Falls, and then I think we went to Idaho Falls, and I think also Salt Lake. There was like 3 stops on this weekend of shows. And first trip in the motorhome, went to the venue in Twin Falls and got all set up and ready to go. And the promoter had arranged for us to do a radio interview that afternoon. So we drove out into the middle of nowhere, out in the desert, to where these radio towers were. And there was this little building that had a radio station in it. And everybody was pretty excited about seeing Midline, because it hadn't been that long before that we had done some shows with Motley Crue, and so we had some pretty good traction going wherever we were playing, and people would actually come see us. So we did this radio interview, and so a lot of gravel, bumpy roads, that kind of stuff, taking this motorhome on that's just rattling and shaking like crazy, and finally ended up getting back on the freeway. So I think it might have been out near Burley where this radio station was, if anybody's familiar with southern Idaho geography. At any rate, we got on the freeway, got going. There were a couple cars that were passing us, honking their horns and waving, and we had Midline was on our license plate, so it was pretty easy to tell that we were the band. And I was driving, and we were just a couple miles away from the exit in Twin Falls, and I was passing a semi-truck, and I was doing about 70, and all of a sudden the loudest explosion noise I'd ever heard in person in my life happened. And just instantaneously, the cabin of the motorhome was full of smoke and debris, and Stymie yells, "We are on fire!" And it appeared like that maybe we were on fire, and the motorhome didn't shimmy or anything. Just this, we didn't know what had happened. Although I suddenly had to try to slow down. I could not see. The entire cabin, like I said, was full of smoke, and semi trucks are passing us, and we didn't know what happened. Through the help of the band members, I think Anthony might have been sitting up with us. We had the promoter with us. Our ears were ringing really, really bad. Everybody was panicking, not really knowing what had happened, and finally made it off to the side of the road and pulled over, and we were trying to collect ourselves because we were shaking pretty bad about what had just happened. There was about a 36-inch, 3-foot diameter hole inside the motorhome where the right inside dual tire of the motorhome had been. So that tire had exploded, the inside dual, and it came through the cab of the motorhome. So where the wheel well was, within that whole 3-foot section were 2 or 3 drawers and some other cabinets and stuff, and it looked just like it did in the movies when something explodes. We had shards of wood that were stuck in the cabinets and cabinet doors of the kitchen, just like knives. It was really surreal. Like I said, we were all shaking. We got out, we didn't know what to do exactly. We had never changed a tire on a vehicle that had dual wheels in the back. And I was looking on the back bumper as we were walking around, and there were all of these rivets. They're about 3 inches long, if you know what a rivet is. It kind of has this nail that goes through, and you put it in a gun, and it pulls that rivet, and you can put stuff together really easy with them, pop rivets. Well, I had hundreds and hundreds of those in a little tool kit in those drawers above the wheel well. And so I had been fixing some stuff on the motorhome with those rivets, and so when that exploded, probably 500 rivets just came through the motorhome and down underneath the motorhome and behind us. And once we decided, okay, we're just going to crawl along the freeway shoulder, because we were probably 5 miles away from the exit, we just drove really, really slow. And as we're driving, we probably passed 7 cars that were off the shoulder of the road that all had flat tires. And so the only thing that we could think of is probably all of those rivets, 500 of them, scattered on the freeway. And those cars probably picked up those rivets in their tires, and that was a result of that tire exploding. And it was pretty crazy, because we went back to the gig, and we're just trying to decide what we were going to do. And Anthony had his credit card, and so we ended up, of the 6 tires on the motorhome, we had to buy 4 new ones. So we had 4 brand new tires on the back duals, and of course we had to get those before the show. And so all the money that we made from that performance immediately went to pay Anthony back for the tires, putting those on his credit card. And that still to this day is the loudest explosion sound I've ever heard in my life. And but to finish that couple days of shows, we took a Jägermeister box and opened it up, and we taped it to where this big hole was in the motorhome. And it had also been raining that weekend, and so that cardboard got really wet, and we had to replace the cardboard several times, and it was cold, and all of those things. Because if you took that piece of cardboard off, here you just have tires just we didn't want it was sketchy at best, and it was one of those experiences that were just like, what in the world just happened? We did lose a tire again in that motorhome in that same position when we were part of this Jägermeister tour with Saliva and Breaking Benjamin, and we had gone to Chicago, and then we had gone to Milwaukee, and then Minneapolis. And on our way home, we drove through North Dakota, and the freeway in North Dakota was just like a 2-lane highway, basically, pretty rough road, and it was getting late in the day, and that inside dual on the right side, again, like we lost the tread on it or something, and at this time it didn't cause as much damage. My father-in-law had rebuilt that wheel well for us, and so when it got damaged, it didn't cause nearly the damage that it did originally. But we knew how to deal with changing the tire on that thing at that time, so that's what we did and continued home. That motorhome was just plagued with problems. It was one of those purchases that in hindsight you went, oh my gosh, this is just ridiculous. So that's my story about exploding tires. Anyway, have an amazing day, and we'll see you later.